Before we start, I would like to thank Programme Director for MBI, Denis Maguire. Denis is an experienced and professional executive with strong leadership, engineering, innovation, operations management, service delivery, and business development skills. He's over 30 years' experience in the ICT sector, working across a range of organisations, from SMEs to multinational. He's a broad range of experience in managing operations, developing business processes, and change control systems to drive operational excellence in varied business environments. I was personally fortunate to work with Denis on the National Broadband Plan, an amazing project, a very important piece of national infrastructure. So, Denis, over to you, and we're really looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the opportunity to present in front of the title of the presentation is the project management behind the MBP, as Tom had said, and let me just run through it with you now. A broad outline of the National Broadband Plan. It is the largest ever telecommunications project undertaken by the Irish state. It will radically transform the country's broadband landscape through the delivery of quality, affordable, high-speed broadband to all parts of Ireland. I think the map on the right-hand side shows the intervention area, which is amber in colour, and the excluded area, which is the area where commercial operators exist. The Department of Environment, Climate and Communications, DCC, are the contracting authority for the MBP. In terms of the chronology, MBI was selected as the preferred bidder on the 9th of May 2019 after a rigorous procurement process. We signed the 25-year contract with the Minister and the Government on the 19th of October 2019, and the effective MBP start date was the 9th of January 2020. So we are coming into our fourth year of operations as MBI, and the MBP forms part of the Irish Government's Project Ireland 2040 planning framework. I think what I'm trying to outline here is the MBP aligns with a broader EU initiative to improve the penetration of high-speed broadband services. And again, our promise is to deliver a network that will be fit for future generations, so we have future-proofed in terms of our technology choice. In terms of some of the numbers, 559,000 plus premises are included in the intervention area, that amber area that I showed on the map earlier on. Nobody will be left behind. That's MBI's guarantee, and we'll ensure that all people, businesses have access to high-speed broadband no matter where they live or work. In terms of the deployment of our fibre network, it's a 7-year build program that's currently scheduled to complete in 2026. But MBI are further responsible for the management and maintenance of the network for the next 25 years. Just in terms of some of the numbers, 559,000 plus premises, I have to say, the IA, the intervention area, continues to grow. In terms of some of just the top level numbers, nearly 1.5 million poles will be used, 143,000 kilometers of cabling will be laid, which I think is about 4 times the circumference of the planet. In terms of our customer connection network, there's nearly 90,000 kilometers of overheads fibre will be laid, and 15,000 kilometers of underground fibre into existing and new duct networks. Our progress so far, just to give you a sense of where we are. So from, I suppose, the start of the workflow, which would be premises surveyed, we 464,000 plus premises surveyed, which is 82%, all the way to premises passed, which is where the deployment is complete and they have been released for sale. So 205,638, which accounts for 37% of the IA, is currently passed, and we've over 66,000 customers currently connected. In terms of that workflow that I had mentioned, starting in the top left corner, it's the IA was the starting point, and we go through survey, we go through design and generation of an LLD or a low level design. We then go into a build phase. At a point, we complete the build and we release the premises. We consider them passed or ready for service. We release them for sale. At that point, customer orders are received through our retail service providers. MBI are a wholesale operator, and we have, I'll talk a bit more about it as we progress through, but sales are done through a network of retail service providers, and it's our job to go out and connect customers. I think that I suppose the collaboration or working together, it's a very challenging project, I think, and collaboration across all aspects of the industry is hugely important, starting with working with existing infrastructure providers, the likes of OpenAir and eNet. We step down a level. We've got key partners on the design and on the build side to basically get the network designed and then the fibre laid into the existing networks. So the likes of Circe, Activo, TLI, Secto, Gaeltech do the build for MBI, and Indigo and Integro are our design partners. Nokia is our active equipment vendor, and they are the ones that light up all the fibre, or their equipment is what lights up all the fibre that's laid. I think at a local authority level, that's the next layer down. Significant interaction with the local authorities and partnership with the local authorities around licensing and around getting access to the existing networks and building new network out there. I think the broadband operators in each local authority, they play a key role in supporting the delivery of the project. And for us, a consistent approach from a national guidelines perspective is critical in terms of the efficiency of build and allowing MBI to be successful. Let me tell you a little bit about MBI. We were established by Granahan McCourt, who has over 30 years experience. They partner with governments, corporations and communities to connect people through innovation and technology in underserved areas of the world. Our SMT and board of directors, they bring a significant experience to bear in the fields of telecoms infrastructure, construction technology and finance, as well as designing, building and operating large-scale telecoms infrastructure projects. MBI was formed as a startup on the 1st of Jan, if I'm not wrong, sorry, on the 9th of Jan 2020 to deliver the MVP. So as I say, we enter our fourth year as an organization. We currently have 300 plus employees, direct employees with MBI, and our partners employ 1,800 plus resources, all dedicated to the delivery of the MVP. We're based in City West. As you can see on the maps on the right hand side, and in terms of who's at the location here from an operations perspective, MBI are here, and we have our NOC, we have our lab facility here, and equally well MBID, which is the deployment side of the organization. They do the design and build, and they are located on site here in City West. What do we do? We're building Ireland's newest high-speed fibre broadband network. We are, as I mentioned earlier, on an open access wholesale only service provider. And that means we don't sell directly to consumers or businesses. Instead, we provide the services and the network to retail and wholesale telecom operators, from the largest to the smallest, on a non-discriminatory basis. The network will be designed, built and operated by MBI, using a combination of state subsidy, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on, and commercial investment. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Project Basket. The contract we have is extremely complicated. It runs to thousands of pages and multiple schedules. We needed to find a way to bring that to life when we launched as MBI. So we came up with the working name of the MVP in MBI, which is Project Basket. There are a number of pillars associated with the delivery of it, which you can see on the bottom or the left-hand side of the slide. And they happen to map nicely to the Blasket Islands off the coast of Kerry, where there were a couple of personal connections at our SMT level that just worked well in terms of the choice of name. So what we call Project More, which would be the largest island, it's the fibre access network, including our active equipments. Project Beginish is our network technology. Vic Ilion is At the outset, we rolled out 970 plus wireless point-to-point links to connect up some strategic community points in line with the request of BBOs in advance of fibre being laid. Project 2 was we stood up our BSS OSS in the greenfield environment. We built it from scratch in the US. Project 2 Skirt is our ERP systems that we have since launched in the business. SAP S4HANA on the finance side and Primavera P6 on the PPM side. And Project Bro is our ongoing operational readiness and operations side of the company. So it was a way to take a complicated project and we think bring it to life so that our employees and people working on the project could understand it. I think our team and contractors are part of the delivery of the largest telecommunications project ever undertaken by the government of Ireland, and it's something that we are very proud of. Let me talk to you a little bit now about the MBI Programme Management Office. So I think at the outset, we looked at a framework to see what would work for the varied environment that MBI is. We settled on PMBOK, and we looked and adapted the PMBOK knowledge areas rather than a rigid PM methodology to take account for the broad and varied business that we are. So the PMO team, we've got 5, it's relatively flat by organizational standards. We've got 5 senior PMs and 9 project managers, 2 service delivery managers, and a project owner, and that comprises the MBI PMO team. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about PPM and the platform that we have chosen. I was going back to the end of our mobilization stage, which was at the end of 2020. Looked and we did a review of how did we mobilize, how successful were we. We looked at program controls, governance, and program delivery, including our processes and systems that we knew would be required to support a 7-year deployment program. Coming out of that, the objective of Horizon was to accelerate to best practice deployment, program management, and delivery. And I think from that, we developed and spent a lot of time developing our end-to-end workflow across design and build, working on how best to build a schedule that would allow us to work with the complexity and the variety of the MVP. The intervention area is broken up into 227 individual deployment areas. And again, behind that, we wanted to build standards and procedures that were consistent and were used across the business. At the time of Horizon, that led us to Oracle Primavera P6, which allowed us to take our deployment plan to scenario model and take all of our mobilization, I suppose, Excel visual sheets and transpose them and manage them within P6. And it also allowed us obviously to understand what were our long-term requirements from PPM. What that led us to was that we went out to a procurement exercise and we selected Oracle Primavera P6 as the platform that we wanted to use. And again, there are multiple ways that we can access it. It's very varied and it works for the environment that MBI exists in, both in terms of office space, but with people out in the field. Just a quick look of what the schedule looked like. A lot of time was spent to build that detailed schedule with all of the logical relationships in terms of predecessors and successors. This is real project management talk, but I mean, I'm talking to the right audience. And I think it allowed us to fully understand where the dependencies were, what the critical path looked like. And from that, in terms of forward and reverse passes through the schedule, allows us to understand where we have float and then what mitigations we have to take around risks and issues when that doesn't exist. So for us, it's a very detailed platform. It is complicated to use, but I think it has allowed MBI at this stage to repeatably design and build the required quantities of premises on a monthly basis that has us ahead of the contract target. The PMO, let me tell you a little bit about what we do. So again, we started out and said, okay, let's divide it up and understand what are all of the tasks and responsibilities required. We came up with a series of delivery pillars. On the left-hand side, from program reporting and governance, we obviously had to deliver the plan, and the plan in terms of the contract is, as I said, the 559,000 premises. There are 900 plus program level milestones, all of which have to be managed and delivered on time, within budget, and to the requisite level of quality. Part of the contract is all of the program milestones I just mentioned are all independently certified by a partner company, and again, it allows us to understand and be very objective around how we are delivering against the contracts. And again, standard PM type practices, change control and change management is a huge aspect, because it's not a static environment. The network is not static, and what the requirements even at a contractual level are not always static. So a robust change control process was important. Risk and issue management, again, I think it's standard PM stock, but it is critically important that risks are understood early, and are properly mitigated and managed. And from the PMO perspective, obviously, we've got people, we need to have processes, and we need to have tools, and we need to manage them through the lifetime of the project. Let me talk quickly about program reporting and governance. So again, I've tried to see some graphics about how we display that, what that looks like, you know, in real time in MBI. But starting at the project agreement level, which is the very top layer, there is a specific schedule in the contract, the reports and record schedule, that details 35 plus tier 1 and tier 2 reports that we have to provide as a matter of compliance against the contracts, both at sometimes at weekly, at monthly, at quarterly, or at annual increments. So again, it's very detailed in terms of what the project agreement requires. But from a business perspective, obviously, we have to operate and understand how we are doing and how we are making progress, what challenges we have. So I spoke earlier on about PPM as a key platform for us. Primavera P6 was chosen. I think from a business perspective, we've created single view, an understanding for us that there are multiple data sources, lots of data floating around about the network, about progress. So it was important for us to really understand that and come up with, whenever you hear about it, the single source of truth, the single source of data. That's what single view is for MBI. So we've got a myriad of systems and tools that exist within the business. The outputs and our quality controlled, you know, internally, and we implement a 2-level review system, a pink and red team quality process, that we're comfortable that from specific systems and tools that the quality of the data is good. At that point, we push that into a data lake that sits on AWS, and its single view is what we use to extract and report on the data after that. So again, as I mentioned, there are 900 plus program milestones. So we have a program milestone dashboard that, again, is fed from the same source. From a GIS perspective, network design and build is very visual. And obviously, from a design and build map perspective, we have implemented different platforms and different tools that allow us to visualize and see how we are performing against plan. I think the hub, again, is another self-developed or MBI developed platform that allows us to exchange information between some of the partners that I had mentioned earlier on the design and build side, and from MBI. So it's a two-way exchange. But the view for us is single view, so that we can report both to our internal stakeholders, but also northbound to the contracting authority, who are DCC, but equally well southbound, if you want to call it that, to the public in terms of how we report on the MVP. Just giving you a view or the number of data sources, you know, that are every day in the business that are pulled into the data lake. And again, they're held and stored there. And I think from a presentation layer, and an analytics layer, we use Tableau and our own analytics platform to actually report on that, and that generates dashboards and all of the requisite reporting structures that we need and routines that we need to meet our objectives. From a governance perspective, again, as I mentioned, the DCC, Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications, manages the contract governance as the contracting authority from the government's perspective. MBI is required to provide regular detailed reports, as I mentioned, across a range of areas. And in turn, DCC would publish regular updates on progress made in delivering the MVP on the Irish Government website, gov.ie. From a structure perspective, there's a well-established and a robust governance framework that is in place to manage contract compliance across technical areas, governance, financial, commercial, and program implementation. And it's, as you can see, there are a number of working groups, and they feed up into what we call our program execution group, which runs in parallel with compliance and contract management. And then it layers up into the contract liaison board and then into the senior management teams of both organizations. Okay, sorry for 1 second now. Deliver the plan. That's really what we're doing. So I just wanted to give you an understanding of the number of milestones. Just looking at 2023, the PMO would have, I suppose, been responsible and been involved in the delivery of a range of milestones across the operations and deployment projects, swim lanes. And you can see from our 200 milestone cert that we achieved against that total of 900, that was in March, to our 50th network build, our M2 milestone, which we achieved in July, all the way through the year. So it just gives you a flavor of what types of milestones and what delivering the plan actually looks like. From a deployment and connections milestones, the key major milestones for us are M1 milestones, which are detailed design complete at a deployment area level. As I mentioned earlier on, there are 227 deployment areas that make up the intervention area. So from an M1 detailed design through an M2, which is the network deployment complete, to P6, which is customer connections, and we're measured at a P6 target as well. So those are the key deployment and connection milestones. There are a myriad of other performance-driven milestones that are not connected to subsidy, but they would be just too detailed to go into. So those are the three key milestones for us. I mentioned earlier on that there's an independent third-party certifier that's contracted with MBI and DCC to provide milestone certification. They are Chronovagen. Our obligations, I suppose, are to collate evidence of milestone achievement as defined in the test strategy. The test strategy is a specific document. It's an annex to one of the contract schedules, but it defines objectively what success looks like for all of the individual milestones. Our job is to collate the evidence. It's to present it to the independent certifier. And success for MBI is when the independent certifier signs the milestone achievement cert, or MAC, and then we submit the milestone claim effectively to DCC. A little graphic there then is when the champagne glasses twinkle. I suppose from a contract change control perspective, a robust change management process has been developed to comply with a specific schedule of the project agreement, and most people in MBI would be very familiar with Schedule 6.2 Annex 2. I think the change request process follows a specific flow where a change request would be submitted, a change impact assessment is completed across the business. At MBI's SMT, we sign it off, and a change authorization is then countersigned by DCC, at which point, if required, the contract schedules are updated, and we re-baseline the project plan if that's required. From an internal business change control process, again, we've developed a similar robust internal change management approach, developed to address the needs of the business. If we think about it in terms of design and build and the technical side of the business, the ongoing operations, connections and assurance and repair, and on the product side and on the commercial side, we do have 60 plus retail service providers that are partners with MBI, and changes in terms of product and requirement comes in through the product and commercial swim lane as well. From a governance perspective, a structured change control forum has been stood up, and I'm not going to list them all, but we have a universal product forum, which probably addresses the product commercial piece. We have change control boards, both at a operations and at a design and build level. And from a pure design perspective, we have a critical design review forum, which again sets the technical standard by which the network will be built against. All right, and into risk management. The slides get quite wordy now, but I think everybody who's a PM understands that the understanding and management of risk is critical if you hope to hit your milestones in terms of time, in terms of cost, and in terms of quality. Again, we've a specific risk management function that exists within MBI, and again, we need to clearly set out, objectives, principles, and concepts of risk management. Roles and responsibilities are key. A risk management culture, and for us, it's supported by the tone from the top. How important risk and risk mitigation comes from the SMT down into the organization, and the risk management function. An easier job, albeit it is complicated and it is difficult. Continue to improve, and we will align to best practice in risk management. We have, I suppose, 8 pillars. There's a risk management framework, which would be the 6 pillars to the left, and a risk appetite for framework as well. So again, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but we spend a lot of time in terms of governance, in terms of risk identification, assessment, and measurement, risk reporting and monitoring, and then understanding what our risk culture is and how that aligns with the risk appetite statements that really flows from the risk appetite framework that's set at board level within MBI. We operate at 3 lines of defense model. This was the first line of defense is the primary risk management area, and that's at a functional area. So we have a program RAID, I suppose, a risk issues and dependencies log. We have individual functional risk registers. The next part is a risk and compliance oversight function. So we have internally what we call the RCMC, Risk and Compliance Management Committee. A lot of the functional managers would sit on that and would take a broader view of risk. And then the third line of defense is our independence assurance, and we use an internal audit function with an external independent auditor to provide that third line of defense. Just want to talk a little bit about the PMO evolution. I think, as mentioned at the top, we started off with a blank piece of paper. We came up with a framework, or a PMO framework, that suited and that was relevant for where we were at the outset, which was a startup company. I think where MBI are at now, as evidenced by some of the earlier milestones, we're nearly 50% of the way towards building the network. We've connected, 30+% of the people in the intervention area. And with that, the PMO is evolving to suit the needs of the business. So again, what we've tried to do as we enter BAU phases, the PMO have developed a set of processes and tools to support the wider business. We've called it the MBI Project Toolkit. And it's an easy to use, well, as easy as PM tools and are to use as a self-service package of templates and tools that can help with the successful delivery of project initiatives, both for project management and non-project management practitioners in the business. So the project agreement with the government is very well defined and very well understood. As we enter and we manage toward that, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the 900+ program milestones. At this point, as we enter BAU, we're finding that projects crop up within the business as we operate as a telecom operator. And this toolkit is an attempt to help the business to manage projects in a structured way. And tying it together with organizational change management, we find that unless the change is very well understood, or the outcome of the project is very well understood and communicated with the business, how effective it is lessens if you don't do that well. So in terms of project management and business readiness, across all the stages of the project lifecycle, initiation, planning, execution, monitor, control, and closing, we have provided a set of tools, templates, and tips that PMs can use. And we've married that with the business readiness element of it in terms of the communication, both in advance with stakeholders, and then as you hand over the outcome of the project to the business. So we have 20 individual templates housed in our own document control library. So I suppose what type, let's jump on. Okay, so what types of projects do we run in MBI? You can see across all the various functions of the business, there are a bunch of different projects. In a lot of cases with different delivery approaches, different tools and templates, governance and reporting. So we've tried to provide a bit of structure and a bit of support to help the business as it manages projects. We understand that all projects require at some level of project management and business readiness consideration to be successful. Okay, so how does the toolkit fit? I mean, I think projects are initiated at various key decision-making forums within the business. I list some of them on the left-hand funnel that translates what the needs and wants of the business are and marries that to resources and approvals through the decision-making forums. The outcome of those are projects, and it is those projects that can use and get the benefit of the MBI toolkit. And again, we are saying no changes are necessarily envisaged to current processes. The toolkit is intended as a useful supporting resource for the business. Okay, who will use it? I think we have be used by PMs in the MBI PMO and by the business transformation teams, but equally well, there are project managers who are new to the game or experienced project managers and non-project managers, or what we call accidental or citizen project manager. The toolkit is designed to be useful for any PM or non-PM in helping you deliver projects that are on your plate. And again, the project toolkit platform, we are an MS Office house. So in that sense, the toolkit has been developed with access to MS Teams, to SharePoint, to Copilot AI and Viva Engage, albeit we use other tools implemented and supported, Atlassian's Jira and Confluence and Lucidchart. And the toolkit is designed to use the existing suite of IT tools as we have them. Project management versus business readiness. For me, this is a key learning for MBI as a business. You can have as many projects and you can deliver them well, but if you don't marry that with business readiness and organizational change management, the outcome is never as effective as it could be. And we've learned that, and we carry that forward in the toolkit, and it is a joint initiative between the PMO and the business transformation team. So that's one of the things that we have clearly learned, and it has helped us to be successful as an organization. The last slide, but I want to, as I said, I want to thank you all for listening today. I want to thank Tom for the invite, and I want to thank Maureen for helping me get here in terms of all of what was required to present today.
Thanks, Dennis. That was an excellent presentation, very detailed. A lot of information there to take in. Some will be familiar with, what you do, and some won't. So it was great to get that oversight, Dennis. Just while we're waiting, I might hit you with one or two questions, Dennis, if that's okay.
Sure. Sure.
There's one or two questions coming in.
Okay.
So anyone that's still online, please feel free to drop a question in there to Dennis, and we put him on the spot. So Dennis, I suppose one of my queries was around, the customer experience, and it's all well and the project's progressing, and you've told us about the tools and the rollout, but what about the end customer? What's your feedback on what's the feedback you're getting from the customer? Are they happy with the service? Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Yeah, no, Tom, that's a very good question. Our experience, I suppose, because we're a wholesale provider, our experience of the end customer is through feedback with the RSP, but we are responsible for the connection, for the customer connection to the MBI network. So we are directly, we communicate with the customer. And from an industry perspective, we look at the Net Promoter Score. So we've got 65,000 plus, and it's growing every day, customers connected. Our minimum bitstream product is 500 meg. You can order a gig, you can order a 2 gig service. So in terms of the speeds involved, when the MVP was envisaged, the map that showed the IA, that amber area versus the blue area, the threshold was set at 30 meg per second. That was the threshold for high-speed broadband around 2012, 2013. And again, the technology choice that MBI went for, XGS-PON, which is an FTTH kind of technology. A lot of people at the time of the bid went, "Wow, is there ever really going to be a market for that? Do you need that level of speed?" And within a number of months of launching our minimum bitstream product, which matches the standard product in the excluded area, was 500 meg. So it's a big step from 30 to 500 meg. Consequently, to get back to your question there, Net Promoter Score, NPS, which is kind of an independent measurement, is about 90, which is very, very high by industry standards. And MBI are very proud of that, in terms of that's the customer's view of the network and their experience of MBI, and also the performance of the network. So that's how we measure that, as well as ongoing engagement we have with RSPs through tags and various forums. But yeah, the customer experience as it's reported back to us is very good.
That's good. That's positive. And just one more. I'll go on to the Q&A now and I'll take up all the time. But can you tell me, even in the last, the last 2 days, 3 days, with the storms that we've had, has that affected business? How does that affect a new organization?
Another good question, Tom. Yeah, hugely so. I mean, we've with the both storms, I suppose the two storms came one after the other, and we've had multiple power outages. The level of ONTs, or customers off the air, is very high compared to steady state. So what we find is that we have to divert all of our own internal resources, our field engineering resources, our partner resources, that would typically be I suppose, used on the build and on the build extension, or as we continue to build, and on connecting customers. All of them have got to be diverted, taken away from the build and connection to bringing the network back into a good state of health. So a storm that lasts maybe 1 day or 2 days, or even 2 consecutive storms, can take 2 to 3 weeks for the network to recover, and for us to then recover the knock-on impact of resources being used elsewhere. Now, that would be the same for ESB. If you're looking for a new ESB connection now, that's all deferred, in favor of service restoration. So it's true of telecom operators, but at MBI, we've had a very clear taste of what that looks like in the last number of days. And right now, it could take us 2 or 3 weeks to fully recover.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I'll just jump into some of the Q&A. We've got a few in, which is positive. So I don't know, can you see them, Dennis, there yourself even? But there's a question here, Pat Scanlon. He's just said, last mile, ? What about FWA, LTE? Do you break out to wireless customers? I think that...
Yeah, so again, the technology of choice for MBI is FTTH, but there is an understanding that for very difficult to reach customers, and I go back to what I said about the SCPs, we've rolled out 970 point-to-point wireless connections. Now, that was ahead of MBI fibre getting there, and over time, those SCPs in schools will be migrated to fibre. But there is a place and there is a use case for us in using wireless technology. I mean, as an example, if you look at an E-band wireless link in the 70 to 80 gig frequency range, you can get 4 to 5 gigs of capacity across a single link. So it is, if I'm understanding the question right, it is a technology that we have in our toolkit and in our arsenal, where just the practicality of pulling fibre to the customer, it doesn't make sense or is not possible. So,
okay, thanks, Dennis. Next question from Brian Cannon. What are the largest, and I think this question might have come in when you were talking about risk management. So what are the largest risks you need to manage in the delivery phase, and what mitigations would you have in place?
There are plenty of risks. I think physically accessing infrastructure.
Yeah.
Existing infrastructure, or the licensing and permits for new infrastructure, and just working that through. And that slide I mentioned about I suppose, working with local authorities. I mean, it's a huge undertaking for them as well as us.
Yeah.
You know, to be out in 26 counties looking to build new network and access existing network in terms of road opening licenses, in terms of traffic management, of tree trimming, in terms of all the things you have to do, you know, to ready yourself either at a pre-works level or at a main works level to build the network. So I'd say those are the largest risks, and they're ongoing mitigation. I mean, that the national standards, the consistent application of them, how we apply for licensing, that you know, it's the same across all local authorities. All that's important, and we very much view it as a partnership with our partners and with local authorities in order to get us to the end of the delivery, because those are the key risks.
Yeah, and I know within local authorities they're being supported, aren't they, by the Department of Climate and Communications?
They are.
With additional staff and where needed to support.
Yeah. So I suppose the DCC is the contracting authority, but you need a whole of government approach because it touches so many other government departments, and DCC have been central in aligning those other government departments, making sure that, you know, our objectives are in line with the strategies of different departments. But yeah, we very definitely are in a good place in terms of what that engagement and what that partnership and cooperation looks like.
Okay, next question then, from Frank Hallisey. Change is mentioned quite a lot, as to be expected in a PM role. Given the overall client, has it been difficult to get approval for changes?
Good question. Very good question. Again, the change process is very well defined in the contract, including timelines for associated approvals and all that comes with that. So I think the changes can be actually probably at times coming from government towards MBI more than MBI towards government. So I would say it's a good process. It's where there are impacts on schedule and where there are impacts on costs, you know, those can be more difficult conversations, but the process and the foundation is there to take us through that with the government, and it is quite effective.
Yeah. Okay, the questions are still flying in, Dennis. Maybe 2 or 3 more quick ones for you. Quick fire maybe. Customer perspective, is it possible to see progress in their own area? When would it be coming to my area, for example? Well, I think, I suppose, to pitch the question slightly different, maybe about 2 months ago, Dennis, I saw some guys out surveying in our area. Okay, what's the typical turnaround to have fibre pass in my home? You know, is it 18 months? Is it 2 years? You know, what's the from survey when they see the white vans?
It's typically 18 months. Yeah, it is typically 18 months. But if you go onto the MBI website, mbi.ie, you can do, first of all, you can do an eligibility search that will tell you if your air code is in the intervention area or is not. And if you are in the intervention area, the time frame for fibre and the stage that we're at from a deployment perspective is all on the website. So once you have your air code, you could right this minute go to mbi.ie and it will tell you the time frame that fibre will be available. And as you say, Tom, are we at survey stage? Are we at design stage? Are we at build stage? But it will set out dates. At times the dates can be a range, because if it's 18 months in the future, there's a bit of variability there. But I think part of our requirement is to deliver against those targets that are laid out in the contract and that are visible on our website. So that information is readily available at an individual level.
Yeah, brilliant. So William Tobin, there's a lot of stakeholders involved. We know that. And he's named the stakeholders there. You can see, you know, how important is your engagement schedule/communication plan?
Yeah, hugely important. To go back to another part of the presentation, where you can have as many projects as you want, but if you don't communicate them well, and if you don't communicate the outcomes and what's expected from them, they generally are less successful than they could be. Very similar in this regard, we need to let people know how we are doing, what they can expect, what MBI's values are. So I think our website is a key resource, but we have a comms team who are, they're consistently out there talking to local authorities, they're talking to service providers. We have tag sessions. There's a whole communications framework, that tries to touch and communicate with every stakeholder, from government all the way down to individuals who are waiting and who are looking for broadband. We put a lot of time and focus into that, because you got to bring people with you, and communication is the best way to. It's what we're trying to do. Going back to the EU slide, I mean, I think Ireland is leading now. If you think about the EU objective for high-speed broadband, maybe 10 years ago, I'd say Ireland was close to the bottom of the league table. In the EU, we're at the top. And I would even say globally, there are very few broadband rollouts that have the ambition to connect everybody. There's nobody left behind. And that's one of the objectives of it. So, but yeah, communication is key to that, to bring people with it.
Yeah, it is fabulous, isn't it, when you put it like that, Dennis, that, and it leads to the next question, but nobody's left behind. Everybody is going to have high-speed broadband. So yeah, Save Nihogan, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And are the areas of the country that are not getting coverage, and is there a plan for an alternative?
So yeah, in terms of going back to just before we signed the contract, it was the last refresh of the map of the intervention area versus the excluded area.
Yeah.
So everybody in the intervention area is entitled and will get a service. The intervention area gets refreshed at times through requests from individuals, requests from the department. We get geodirectory updates, we get natural growth, we get new houses, and actually lately, there's a big play about the derelict houses that are being brought back into stock. Yeah. I know Dermot Bannon got on the wrong side of that in terms of grants and all that, but we leave that aside. But so it changes on an ongoing basis. And again, once you're in the intervention area, and that's where MBI exists, because we're a public-private partnership and we use government subsidy, we can't compete with commercial operators. That would be unfair competition. So consequently, if you're in the IA, you will get a service.
Yeah. It's fantastic. So Anne Rogers, hi Anne. Anne's a PM committee member. What were the top 2 or 3 challenges in delivering the project? Was procuring, retaining experienced resources? Yeah, I was going to ask that question. Getting resources is always a challenge. So yeah, what was your top challenges in delivering the project?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I suppose going back to the risks, it was setting ourselves up. Well, we go back even to understanding the workflow end to end, building a schedule, that we could properly report on. That was a key challenge in terms of, again, because it's taxpayer money. There's a very robust procurement oversight that the minister and the government and DCC would manage. So again, for us to go out and go through that level of procurement to bring in key services and key partners, while we were trying to mobilize, that was a really kind of real challenge in the first year. But I think, again, we're there. Like, we had to procure a whole range of services, a whole range of equipment and supplies to build the network. So I'd say understanding what it takes from a workflow and schedule perspective, and then the procurement piece that comes with that. And I think as MBI, when we launched on the 9th of Jan 2020, there was probably circa 20 or 25 people in the org. We went immediately into COVID, and I would think we went from 25 to over 200 in COVID. And that meant interviewing, recruiting, onboarding people in a remote environment. And now as we shift back into hybrid and to a more traditional environment, that has evened itself out. But that was a big challenge at the time. And again, one that it's easy to overlook, but you're talking 9 to 12 months of delay, as a result of COVID, that we've managed to overcome and get ourselves back on target to complete the deployment in time.
Yeah, and that it's a key point, isn't it, Dennis? NBI are a startup organization, and with that challenge of COVID in there, that's really left it challenging for you. Okay, quickly through the questions keep coming in. So, how are MBI currently managing change on the projects, and more specifically contractual claims? I guess you covered that a little bit with the change process, but if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
No, I think we have robust kind of internal change and external and contract change, but the commercial mechanics of that are they wouldn't be appropriate for me to try to get into.
No, sorry, and that was from Andrew Thompson. My apologies. So Winsley Cinders. Hi Dennis, great presentation. Did you use EVM to track the project performance, and what were some of the project performance KPIs? Again, you probably can't get into the detail of that, but
no, there are a bunch of key performance indicators and performance indicators that I suppose marry up into a very robust KPI regime across all elements of the build and ongoing operational performance. Earned value management, that brings me back to my Ericsson days. We haven't utilized it in MBI. Again, we have different metrics and different ways of understanding them, but I do have some experience in it. I'd be curious now if the questioner comes from an Ericsson background. But anyway, that's maybe neither here nor there. So, but there's a robust and very comprehensive PI and KPI regime that build up into individual metrics that we're measured against.
I think the questions keep coming in, Dennis. So there's one or two more that we can maybe
sure.
we can answer quickly. So from Marcus Henning, we can share the slides afterwards. I think we've agreed to do that. There's no problem there. Is MBI competing with Cero, which uses ESPN networks to roll out the fibre? I don't think that's the case, Dennis, but
certainly we operate in the intervention area. And that's our remit, that's our area that we operate in. I couldn't speak to where Cero are rolling out, to be honest.
So Rodrigo Santos, could you provide insights into how the management of ERP inputs from multiple users and workflows is handled within the Primavera P6 tool? Ensuring effective governance and alignment with internal process, as mentioned by Dennis. That's a good one to finish off.
So there are, I think for us, important to understand the range of inputs. I mean, from the technical and design side, from finance, we had to understand our own processes, design and develop our own processes. I suppose understand the touch points and how they interacted with each other, and then build up the business requirements, our statement of requirements, which we went out to an ERP procurement. And at the time, the ERP procurement included PPM. So we took that holistic view to say, well, we needed an ERP platform, in MBI that managed, procurement, finance, technical schedule, HR, all the different elements. So it was in that business requirements and statement of requirements generation. That's where we try to address everything so that we had it thought of in advance. Is it perfect? There's no such thing as perfect. If you're a project manager, I think perfect is the enemy of progress. But I think we have a system, an ERP system that is effective and works for the needs of MBI.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Dennis. Dennis, we're going to leave it there. I think we're bang on 2:00, and no doubt everyone's jumping back into meetings now, and you probably are too.